Hello, everybody. My name is Jim, and this is my reading wrap up for August 2023. First, a little life update. If you haven't noticed already, I've been sticking to a Saturday only schedule. Things have picked up at work, and I just haven't had the time to edit multiple videos a week. That's it. So, for the foreseeable future, I am going to stick to a Saturday schedule. With that out of the way, I'm going to jump into the first book that I read from cover to cover this month. The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes is the story about a girl named Yamilet who was outed by her best friend at a public school and now has to transfer to a predominantly white Catholic school. This book is YA. It has some of those quintessential YA tropes that I don't particularly like. It talks about Fortnite dances for a little bit. I don't really like pop culture references in books because they tend to date the book. And, 100 years down the line, I'm not sure people living in that time will know what Fortnite is. Who knows? We don't know. Otherwise, I did give this book a 4-star rating. The way that I picked up this book was I used a service, Open Cover Books, and I asked for LGBTQ plus representation as well as adoption representation because it is impossible to find any book that isn't a children's book that covers adoption, that doesn't feature the adoptee as a villain or as somebody with magical powers. They don't really go through the thoughts and struggles that adoptees typically have. Even as adults, like I still deal with certain things as an adopted adult. But this book featured that, and I was like, you know what? You guys took the time, even though I don't typically read YA, I will give it a shot. This book does cover homophobia, it covers racism, it covers religious oppression, among other things, but those are the three main points. I really did, the younger me really did connect to some of the characters that were introduced in this book, particularly Caesar. I saw a review that said, Caesar is my son and I will protect him. Yes, he is my brother and I will protect him. There were a lot of experiences that he went through that I had to experience as well. He is this lovable goofball that I would have loved to have been his friend when I was his age. There was very little subtlety and very little nuance to some of the experiences that Yamilet had, but I do attribute that to this being YA. Now, on the adoption end, it didn't go as deep as I had hoped. For the story that it told, it was fine, but that situation was viewed more through a racial lens. And while I don't have a problem necessarily with the story that it told, I'm still looking for that book about adoption that goes a little bit deeper with the thoughts and insecurities that come with being a teenager or being an adult. I'm still looking for that book. So if you have any recommendations, definitely leave those in the comments because I would like to find a book that I can relate to on that front because right now it is impossible. The Quiet Tenant by Clémence Michelon. Oh my gosh. I really enjoyed this. There are some content warnings with this book, however, SA, kidnapping, anything that would go along with a kidnapping plot, CA. But I will say that while there are content warnings, they are not explicit. If they were explicitly written, I would not have enjoyed this book as much. I did do a character analysis for this, which I might have to rebrand because really it is just me talking about the plot with a focus on characters and their relationships with each other. But I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed following the characters so much that I had to do that. I had to make a video covering that. So I would absolutely recommend, if you enjoy a thriller, to get this book, either check it out or purchase it, read it, and then go to that video and let me know your thoughts because I'm curious. I would love to have a quasi book club discussion about this book at some point. If you just want to have it in the comment section of that video, that's cool. This story mostly follows a character named Rachel, who in the beginning of the story is in a shed, but you find out very quickly that the man who has held her captive for 5 years has to move. He has been basically evicted from his house by his deceased wife's parents. This man, you will find out, is beloved in the town, and it just makes you hate him more, and it just makes you want Rachel to win even more. I have compared this book to the movie Hush. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but basically in that movie, the main character goes through a number of scenarios where she is also in a hostage situation, a captive situation, where she goes through these scenarios in her head to try to escape. This is more or less how Rachel thought throughout the book. I really enjoyed being in her head, even though her circumstances were bleak, because it wasn't really about her captivity as much as it was her planning to escape from it, if that makes sense. It was about her mind and her need for escape, her hunger to get out of there. It just made you want to root for her. I did, from front to back. I wanted her to win. I hated Aiden, who was the man who kidnapped her. Really, I just needed to make it to the end of this book. And I did, and I rated this 5 stars. It was great. There were some things that I think could have been done better. This is Clémence Michelin's debut, but in the video where I detailed the plot at the end, I did mention some things that I wish were done a little bit better, particularly around the 3 main characters, Rachel, Cecilia, and Emily, who are the other 2 perspectives that we followed. Their stories were very much important, but as far as their perspectives are concerned, they weren't as prominent as Rachel, but they were there to kind of fill in the gaps and help us understand a little bit more that was going on behind the scenes when we weren't with Rachel. And I thought that was important because Rachel really was confined to very specific places. So we did need a little bit more of that outside perspective, and those 2 characters provided that for us. But yeah, overall, this was an amazing debut, and I do look forward to other books from this author. Now moving on to the books that I've started, but I have not finished yet. Play the Fool by Lena Chern is a book about a girl named Katie True. This is not a YA novel, even though that is the most YA name ever. She is a tarot reader who is working in an antique shop, I guess, at the mall. It's not a very popular place. People don't really go in there to shop, so she has her tarot, quote, business there to kind of help out. And while a rare visitor comes into her store, she discovers that her best friend Marley has been murdered. And she puts it on herself, as thriller heroines tend to do, to find out who killed her best friend. This story goes back and forth between the present day and also her friendship with Marley, but so far the past and the present haven't really connected outside of us learning a little bit more about Marley. What I hope will happen is that over time, Katie will uncover something about her relationship, her friendship with Marley, that connects it to the crime. But so far, I'm not really feeling that. But it is an interesting book. I do enjoy the tarot angle. I like how Katie uses the tarot cards to read people. I do think that this book would be interesting to a number of readers. But for now, it is sitting at a 3-star, but I'm not ready to give it up just yet. So I'm going to keep reading. Hopefully the past and the present collide a little bit and we learn more about Marley and pick up some clues about her murder from conversations and some interactions that she had with Katie. But yeah, so far it's pretty lukewarm. It's pretty in the middle. It's interesting enough that I'm not willing to put it down just yet. I don't think I'm going to DNF this. Big Gay Wedding by Byron Lane. I have finally gotten around to this this book because I needed some gay joy this month. This is the story of a man named Barnett and his fiancée Ezra, who come to visit Barnett's mother at her farm and announces to his family, Barnett's family, that they are engaged and are planning to get married. His mother is... I almost said she is the face of tolerance, but I don't even think she's quite there yet. She's not brutal, she's not evil, but she is still homophobic. She is borderline tolerant, which is not accepting. Being tolerant does not mean you value a person. It just means I don't like what you're doing, but I'm going to deal with it. And that's basically what she's trying to do. I mean, I hope that over time she has an awakening and becomes a bit more accepting. But anyway, this book has been compared to the show Schitt's Creek. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a comedy. It's funny. And this book is pretty funny. I have laughed out loud a few times, but I will say that there's one character specifically. She's introduced around the middle that I think is a little overdone. I think Byron Lane ran out of ways to make people realistically eccentric and just went wild with his character because she is so over the top. It is not funny. So hopefully we don't really hear too much from her. She does seem to be like the side character. So yeah, there are some misses here, but so far this book is leaning 4 and 5. As with any book prominently featuring a queer relationship or a queer person, this group does face homophobia, very blatant, in your face. And of course, there is some from the mom, but I am currently at a part where the homophobia is very loud, and I am hoping that this group gets past it quickly and is able to escape this hurdle and move on with their fun, quirky, funny, hilarious wedding plans, because I'm not here for trauma. I am here for fun times and a wedding. Yes, this is a romance, and I said that if I were to begin enjoying a romance, I would let you know. Well, I'm letting you know that I'm enjoying this book. But yeah, great book, 4 or 5 stars. I am looking forward to wrapping this up in September, and hopefully both of these books will be featured again in that wrap up in full. Now on to the 2 books that I DNF'd. If you would like to leave this video now, please feel free. I am not going to recommend either of these books. So if you want to, just go ahead and check out the Goodreads links for the other 4 that I've already mentioned in the description below. But yeah, these 2 books I DNF'd. So Falling by TJ Newman, I DNF'd pretty quickly. I was about 15% of the way through. Before I tell you why I DNF'd, I'm just going to kind of introduce the plot to you. In this story, in the beginning, a pilot's family is held hostage. He goes about his day-to-day. He ends up in the cockpit of his plane, and, come to find out there's a bomb in his bag, planted by an intruder that entered his house, and he's more or less hijacked the plane because in order for the pilot's family to survive, the pilot has to crash the plane and kill everybody on it. I DNF'd this book as soon as the villains were described as Middle Eastern. Not only is that Islamophobic, but it is also lazy. Anybody could have set this up. Anybody could have held the family hostage, but instead, TJ Newman decided to go that route. It just wasn't something that I appreciated. It wasn't something that I thought was very compelling, first and foremost, because again, anybody could have done this. It didn't have to be somebody of Middle Eastern descent, and I do not like her perpetuating that fear. I closed this book really quickly because I knew that after that point I wouldn't enjoy it. So yeah, I decided to DNF. Now, Song of the Exile is the reason why I was confident enough to DNF Falling so quickly. But first of all, I will say that her prose was described as spellbinding, which is just another word for purple. Some of her prose was beautiful, while some other bits of prose were the purplest of purple. They were very overly descriptive, and I will get into that in a second. But yeah, in general, this was about World War II, but the synopsis just did not cover what was going on in this book. We were barely in Hawaii. So Ko is one of the main characters and also the biggest problem in this book. But when he visited his family, all of those scenes were great. I really enjoyed his family, getting to know them. That is the part of the synopsis that was real. And I connected with it, and I thought it was very well written and beautifully done. But so much of this story, like 95% of it, I would say, of KO's story was about him playing a trumpet, him in a jazz band. At no point in the synopsis did it mention jazz or a character being a musician, because at least then I would expect it. I wouldn't be as surprised by the fact that so much of the book was about jazz. And Kiana Davenport seriously exhausted every single possible way you could describe someone blowing into a trumpet. That's that spellbinding prose, But yeah, that was boring. That was not something that I expected in this story. It wasn't really that compelling over time. I do understand him being a jazz musician was a part of his character, which was perfectly fine, but I wish there was a little bit more to that than just jazz. There was another character named Sunny whose story was compelling. It was dramatic. She talked about her captivity twice, being a Korean living in Hawaii. But every time the story, her story in particular, ramped up and got interesting, we would go back to jazz. And it just wasn't, it just felt like a slog. The jazz was not the reason why I DNF'd this book, because that was something that I could look past and say, you know what, I did not enjoy this book. I will give it 2 stars. And this part is where I might get in trouble. I might lose subscribers, but I don't care. It's my feelings. And I am passionate about my feelings. Hey, it's Future Jim. Just a couple of notes. The first one is that I am going to talk about something that happened to a gay man that was pretty brutal. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I did want to warn you. Second of all, you might hear that I inserted myself saying the word Nazi a couple of times in the upcoming portion of this video. That's because initially I had German there, and I in no way want to imply that those 2 words are in any way synonymous, because they are not. And also, what I'm about to say is a spoiler for the book. It's a very minor part, but it is the reason why I DNF'd. That's all. The reason why I DNF'd the book and never looked back was that Kiana Davenport decided that the Nazi that KO was going to finally stand up against and take a stand and, show him what's what. He was gay. He ended up in the car with KO, and KO, I believe, was drunk or, just out of sorts. And this Nazi unzipped KO's pants and started fondling him in a car in a place where KO was not able to escape. Until the car stopped, he pulled the Nazi out of the car and beat him to death. From there, he is captured by the Japanese, and his captor told him multiple times, laughing, I don't like homosexuals either. And this was like a bonding moment for KO. This was one of the reasons why I guess he was let out on good behavior, is because he killed the gay guy. This was a decision that the author made, and there was one review who mentioned the homophobia, but other reviews were just like, oh, this book was so beautiful, it was so well done. So, it's kind of like I'm sitting here, I feel like I'm gaslighting myself, like maybe I'm, overreacting, maybe it's not that big a deal, but no, it is a big deal. But I'm not here to guilt people. If they enjoyed this book, then, you enjoyed this book. Such is life. And typically, as a rule on this channel, if a book makes me feel that bad, then I won't even talk about it on this channel, because I don't want to bring it to light. I don't want people to kind of, I guess, against me read the book. I don't want that to happen. But the reason why I talked about this book here now is because I did feature it in a video about cultural preservation. If anybody knows of a book that features Hawaii fully and completely and beautifully, and is preferably written by a Hawaiian author. I would really love to give this another shot. Let's just go ahead. Let's put it in the past. Let's talk about the 4 books that I either read or am part of the way through. The links to their Goodreads pages are in the description below. Go to the retailer of your choice and purchase them from there, or visit your library or use your library app to check them out. Otherwise, I have been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading.